The Silent Architecture, ISI. Imagine a world where unseen eyes watch every move you make, where whispered conversations are decoded before reaching their destination, and where shadows hold the secrets of national security. In this invisible domain, operatives move silently, analyzing threats, infiltrating hostile networks, and preventing crisis before the world even knows they exist. Today, we step behind the curtain to reveal the internal architecture of Pakistan's most secretive intelligence agency, where precision, secrecy, and foresight define every operation. Hello, everyone. How are you all doing? Where are you watching from today? Stay with us as we unravel the intricate system, departments, and networks that make the ISI the silent shield of Pakistan. Let's dive into this thrilling exploration of covert structures and hidden strategies. At the inception of Pakistan's intelligence apparatus, the necessity for an organized internal system was immediate. The agency could not function without clear structures, defined responsibilities, and a hierarchy that was invisible to outsiders. The first challenge was creating departments, each designed for a specific dimension of intelligence. Some focused solely on human intelligence gathering, others on signals interception, and yet others on analyzing political and social trends to anticipate threats. Each department operated like a cog in a larger machine, functioning independently yet interconnected to produce a cohesive network of information. Early offices were unremarkable from the outside. Ordinary buildings, warehouses, and rented flats became the nodes of intelligence activity. Inside, a meticulous system of compartmentalization was established. No agent ever had access to the full picture. Knowledge was segmented by department, by project, and even by mission phase. This ensured that a breach in one area could not compromise the entire network. Files were meticulously coded. Oral instructions and signals were employed to maintain operational secrecy. Human intelligence units moved among civilians, blending perfectly while extracting critical information from social, political, and commercial networks. The agency's zonal network soon expanded across Pakistan. Each zone had a designated headquarters, often disguised as ordinary government or private offices. These zones acted as intelligence relay points, connecting field operatives to central analysis hubs. Within each zone, local agents were selected for their discretion, analytical skills, and understanding of regional dynamics. Every neighborhood became a potential observation point, every business or social gathering a source of actionable insight. Through these zones, the ISI could monitor developments without drawing attention, ensuring that no detail, however minor, escaped notice. Communication between field units and headquarters was critical. Agents developed an intricate system of reporting that combined both traditional and covert methods. Messages were encrypted, transmitted through trusted couriers, or passed using subtle, prearranged signals. Every report underwent scrutiny. Analysts cross-referenced field intelligence with signals data, human insights, and external information sources. Even minor inconsistencies were investigated rigorously, as a single overlooked detail could jeopardize operations or national security. The internal structure emphasized psychological preparedness and operational discipline. Candidates entering the field underwent a process of identity transformation. Personal histories were minimized, emotional attachments temporarily severed, and their entire focus redirected toward mission objectives. Training environments were carefully controlled to simulate unpredictability. Clocks ran inconsistently, schedules changed daily, and environmental cues were altered to prevent reliance on routine. Trainees faced simulated crises, betrayals, and high-pressure scenarios to cultivate resilience and instinctive decision-making. Observation became the cornerstone of the ISI's methodology. Agents learned to interpret micro-expressions, subtle gestures, and behavioral anomalies. A delayed blink, a shift in posture, or a slight hesitation could reveal intentions invisible to untrained eyes. Every movement in the field, every conversation overheard, And every transaction observed contributed to a growing mosaic of intelligence that was carefully analyzed, verified, and acted upon. Memory, attention to detail, and analytical reasoning were rigorously trained, ensuring that every operative could function independently yet contribute to a larger strategic vision. Inside the headquarters, security protocols were extraordinary. Corridors were designed to confuse outsiders. Offices changed locations, seating arrangements rotated, and clocks displayed differing times. Departments operated autonomously, ensuring that even internal movements were compartmentalized. The combination of technology, human analysis, and disciplined methodology created a resilient network capable of operating under constant threat, yet remaining invisible to the outside world. As the agency matured, the coordination between zonal units and headquarters became increasingly sophisticated. Signals intelligence units intercepted foreign communications, while human intelligence agents corroborated field observations. Analysts within headquarters interpreted complex patterns, predicted regional developments, and advised field units on strategic priorities. Each department, whether focusing on surveillance, counterintelligence, or psychological analysis, was a critical element of the silent architecture that maintained Pakistan's security posture. The philosophy of the internal system was clear: anticipate, act with precision, and leave no trace. Every layer of the organization was designed to protect information, prevent compromise, and ensure operational efficiency. From small offices in local neighborhoods to the central analysis hubs, the internal architecture functioned as an invisible network, resilient against both internal and external threats. The ISI silent architecture was not simply a hierarchy or collection of departments. It was a living, adaptive system, a shadow network that transformed raw data into actionable insight, capable of influencing outcomes without being seen or heard. The Zonal Network, ISI. In the vast and varied terrain of Pakistan, the ISI's effectiveness depended on its ability to decentralize operations while maintaining strict coordination. The Zonal Network became the backbone of internal intelligence operations, allowing the agency to operate in cities, border regions, and strategic locations simultaneously. Each zone was more than just a geographic division. It was a self-contained intelligence hub designed to collect, process, and relay information without ever drawing attention. These zones were carefully selected based on strategic importance, population density, political influence, and potential threats. Major urban centers became central nodes, while border towns and rural districts served as observation outposts. Every zone had a designated headquarters, typically an ordinary-looking building that concealed extensive communication and analysis capabilities. Analysts and operatives worked in silence, reviewing reports, cross-referencing human and signals intelligence, and preparing strategic recommendations for the central headquarters. Within each zonal headquarters, roles were strictly compartmentalized. Some operatives specialized in monitoring local political developments, others in tracking foreign influence or extremist activities, while another group focused entirely on human intelligence collection. The strict separation of duties ensured that even if one segment of a zone was compromised, the overall network remained secure. Every operative knew only what was essential for their function, preventing any unnecessary exposure of sensitive information. Recruitment and placement of agents within zones were meticulous. Local knowledge was invaluable. Operatives had to understand cultural nuances, regional dialects, social hierarchies, and informal networks of influence. Many agents were trained to blend seamlessly into the civilian population, taking up professions or roles that allowed them to observe, listen, and record without arousing suspicion. Every social gathering, every market, every public event became a potential source of intelligence if approached with discipline and subtlety. The zones were linked to the central headquarters through secure communication channels. Initially, information traveled through coded messages, trusted couriers, and prearranged signals. As technology evolved, encrypted digital transmissions supplemented traditional methods, but human judgment remained paramount. Each report underwent rigorous analysis before it was considered actionable. Analysts compared field intelligence with historical patterns, political developments, and other zones' findings to create a comprehensive situational map. Regular drills and internal simulations were conducted within zones to maintain operational readiness. Agents were tested on rapid identification of threats, extraction of sensitive information, and emergency protocols. Mistakes were quietly corrected, emphasizing learning and adaptation over punishment. This constant practice created a culture of vigilance, precision, and anticipation, where each agent internalized the philosophy that foresight was the most effective form of defense. Zonal leadership played a critical role in coordinating field activities. Leaders ensured that every unit within the zone operated in harmony, monitored performance, and maintained the integrity of information flow. Meetings were conducted with utmost discretion. Even internal communications were encoded or verbal, ensuring that no paper trail or digital footprint could compromise the zone's operations. The authority of zonal leaders was absolute within their area, but decisions that could impact national security required verification from central headquarters, maintaining a balance between autonomy and oversight. The zonal network also allowed rapid deployment of specialized teams to respond to emerging threats. If intelligence indicated an impending crisis, whether political unrest, foreign espionage, or insurgent activity, teams could be dispatched swiftly, blending into the environment while gathering critical data or neutralizing risks. Coordination with other zones ensured that larger threats were contained without alerting the public or adversaries. Beyond intelligence gathering, zones became centers of analysis. Operatives reviewed behavioral patterns, social dynamics, and communication trends. Micro-level observations, such as subtle changes in local political alliances or unexpected movements of key individuals, were escalated for central review. This emphasis on detailed observation created a predictive model, allowing the EC to act before events fully unfolded. Psychological preparation continued within zones. Agents were trained to remain calm under pressure, to anticipate deceit, and to make decisions independently when necessary. Ethical boundaries were blurred in training exercises to prepare operatives for morally complex real-world scenarios. Collaboration between zonal units and headquarters became increasingly sophisticated, combining human intelligence, signals interception, and advanced analytical methods. Even in remote or high-risk areas, the zonal network maintained continuous surveillance. Local contacts, informants, and trusted civilians contributed information discreetly, feeding a constant stream of data into the system. Every observation, no matter how minor, was logged, analyzed, and cross-checked. In this way, the EC created an intricate web where each zone functioned as both a node and a lens, capturing reality from multiple perspectives and feeding a silent, invisible architecture of knowledge. By decentralizing authority yet maintaining strict internal protocols, the EC created a system where the shadows could move freely, threats could be anticipated, and the country's security remained in vigilant, unseen hands. Field and headquarters communication in the intricate web of Pakistan's intelligence operations, the seamless flow of information between field agents and central headquarters became the lifeblood of ECS effectiveness. Field units, often operating in hostile or high-risk environments, were the eyes and ears of the agency, while the headquarters functioned as the brain, analyzing data, making decisions, and directing operations. The synchronization between these two components demanded precision, secrecy, and unwavering discipline. From the earliest days, communication methods were carefully designed to prevent detection. Physical messages were often passed through trusted couriers, disguised as mundane deliveries or personal correspondence. Oral instructions were delivered using coded language, gestures, or prearranged signals that could convey complex directives without leaving a trace. Over time, technological advancements were cautiously integrated encrypted telephones, secure radio transmissions, and later, digital channels, yet human judgment and verification remained the cornerstone of operational security. Every report sent from the field underwent rigorous scrutiny. Agents documented observations on enemy movements, political developments, or unusual social activity, often using code words or abstract symbols to obscure meaning. Analysts at headquarters cross-referenced these reports with intelligence from other zones, previous historical data, and signals intercepted by specialized units. Even subtle inconsistencies were investigated, as a single misinterpreted detail could jeopardize operations or compromise national security. Field operatives were trained to act autonomously, making split-second decisions while understanding that their actions could have strategic consequences. These agents had to balance discretion with initiative, ensuring that even when immediate guidance from headquarters was unavailable, their decisions aligned with the agency's broader objectives. This combination of autonomy and centralized oversight created a resilient network capable of responding to dynamic threats across Pakistan and beyond. The psychological demands on field agents were immense. They operated in constant observation, often blending seamlessly into civilian environments to avoid suspicion. Every interaction could yield critical intelligence, and every misstep could compromise not just the mission, but entire networks. Agents were taught to detect subtle cues in behavior hesitations, tone changes, micro-expressions, analyzing these in real time to anticipate intentions or identify potential risks. Their training emphasized mental endurance, emotional detachment, and the ability to function under extreme stress, as even a minor lapse could have national implications. Within headquarters, specialized units interpreted field intelligence with methodical precision. Analysts examined patterns, verified information against multiple sources, and predicted adversarial strategies. Signals intelligence teams monitored communications, often uncovering threats before they materialized. The human intelligence and signals data were integrated into cohesive operational directives, which were then transmitted back to field units through secure channels. This feedback loop ensured that actions in the field were continuously informed, updated, and optimized. To maintain operational integrity, the agency implemented rigorous security protocols. Field agents never had full visibility of the internal network, knowing only what was necessary for their missions. This compartmentalization prevented accidental disclosure and limited exposure if an agent was captured or compromised. Headquarters, in turn, monitored each agent's activity, ensuring that reports were accurate, timely, and complete. The flow of information was dynamic but tightly controlled, creating a system where intelligence could be acted upon with speed and discretion. Code systems evolved to meet emerging threats. Numbers, symbols, and seemingly innocuous phrases could convey complex orders, locations, or alerts. Agents memorized these codes and executed directives without the need for written instructions, minimizing the risk of interception. Secure drop points, encrypted transmissions, and clandestine meetings formed an elaborate lattice of communication that connected field operations with strategic decision-making at the heart of the agency. Operational exercises reinforced these communication protocols. Scenarios simulated hostile interference, betrayal, or environmental challenges to test an agent's adaptability. Mistakes were analyzed, lessons internalized, and procedures refined. This continuous cycle of practice, evaluation, and adjustment ensured that when real missions arose, the communication between field and headquarters was flawless, almost instinctive, and capable of overcoming the unpredictability of complex environments. Through this intricate coordination, the ISI developed a predictive capability. By combining field observations, historical data, and analytical insight. The agency could anticipate movements of adversaries, preempt hostile actions, and direct resources to areas of greatest strategic need. The relationship between field units and headquarters was symbiotic. One could not function effectively without the other. This dynamic allowed the ISI to maintain its edge in both domestic and international intelligence arenas, reinforcing the philosophy that silence, foresight, and precision were the ultimate tools of security. The field-to-headquarters connection was more than just a communication channel. It was the artery that carried life to the shadow network. Every report, every signal, every observation flowed through this system, ensuring that decisions were informed, actions were preemptive, and national security remained under an invisible, vigilant guard. The sophistication of this architecture, coupled with the dedication of its operatives, created a resilient and adaptive network capable of responding to threats across multiple domains without ever revealing its presence. Intelligence gathering methods, ISI, the foundation of every successful operation, lay in the way information was gathered. The ISI's strength did not come from numbers or weaponry, but from its ability to collect, interpret, and anticipate threats before they materialized. Intelligence gathering became an art form, blending human skill, technology, and psychological insight into a single coherent system that operated across domestic and international arenas. Human intelligence, or HUMINT, was the backbone of this approach. Operatives in the field, often embedded in communities or foreign networks, observed, listened, and subtly extracted information without revealing their purpose. Every conversation was analyzed, every hesitation studied, and every interaction used as a potential window into intentions and loyalties. Local knowledge was invaluable. Agents had to understand social hierarchies, cultural nuances, and informal networks of influence. They were trained to identify key individuals, map relationships, and track movements, creating a living map of human behavior that could predict future actions. Signals intelligence, or SIGINT, complemented HUMINT. Early intercepts involved simple wiretaps and coded messages. But as technology advanced, sophisticated electronic surveillance was introduced. Encrypted communications were intercepted, patterns analyzed, and anomalies flagged for further investigation. The integration of SIGINT with human observation allowed analysts to verify information, identify inconsistencies, and detect hidden agendas. This dual approach ensured that no single source could mislead decision-makers, and that every operational directive was based on verified intelligence. Open-source intelligence, or OSINT, though less glamorous, played a subtle yet crucial role. Publicly available information news reports, academic publications, social media signals, and commercial data was continuously monitored. Analysts could identify emerging threats, track movements, and gain insights into adversarial intentions. While ESINT alone could not drive operations, its integration with HUMINT and SIGINT created a more comprehensive and dynamic understanding of the environment. Field operations were designed with meticulous care. Agents would observe patterns over time, noticing shifts in behavior or unusual activities. They would record seemingly insignificant details that, when aggregated, formed predictive intelligence. Reporting was coded and transmitted through secure channels, maintaining secrecy while providing the central headquarters with actionable insights. Every observation was cross-checked against historical trends, regional dynamics, and intelligence from other zones, creating a multi-layered perspective that was both accurate and timely. Specialized teams focused on high-value targets or strategic locations. They operated discreetly, gathering information that could influence national security policy, preempt hostile actions, or mitigate emerging threats. Surveillance techniques were constantly refined, incorporating the latest technological advancements while adhering to the principle that human judgment was paramount. Even the most advanced equipment could not replace the instinct, discretion, and analysis of a skilled operative. Analytical frameworks within headquarters were designed to translate raw data into actionable intelligence. Analysts used structured methodologies to evaluate reliability, assess risk, and prioritize targets. Patterns of behavior, communication anomalies, and inconsistencies were mapped to identify emerging threats. Intelligence was not only descriptive but predictive, providing decision-makers with foresight into events before they unfolded. This predictive capacity became a hallmark of the agency, enabling preemptive action and strategic advantage. Training reinforced these capabilities. Operatives were taught to maintain meticulous observation logs, to detect deception, and to process information rapidly under pressure. Scenario-based exercises tested their ability to identify threats, respond to unexpected developments, and adapt to complex environments. Cognitive endurance, ethical judgment under duress, and psychological resilience were continuously honed to ensure operatives could handle the demands of high-stakes intelligence work. Coordination between intelligence collection units and operational teams was seamless. Field observations were immediately integrated into strategic planning, ensuring that every decision was informed by real-time, verified intelligence. This interplay created a dynamic network in which intelligence drove action, and action, in turn, refined intelligence. The system was adaptive, resilient, and self-correcting, capable of responding to emerging threats across domestic and international landscapes. Through these methods, human, SIGINT, ASINT, and rigorous analysis, the ISI developed an unparalleled ability to anticipate, influence, and neutralize threats. Intelligence gathering was not merely a task. It was the lifeblood of the agency, a continuous cycle of observation, interpretation, and action that ensured the security of the nation remained in vigilant, unseen hands. Every decision, every operation, and every success rested on the foundation of meticulous, disciplined, and adaptive intelligence work, demonstrating that in the shadows, foresight was the most powerful weapon. Training and psychological preparation. The foundation of any effective intelligence agency lies not just in its ability to collect information, but in the preparation of those who carry out the missions. Within ISI, training was not a simple classroom exercise. It was an immersive, exhaustive process designed to transform ordinary individuals into extraordinary operatives, capable of operating in extreme conditions, under immense pressure, and with total discretion. From the earliest days, psychological conditioning became as crucial as physical endurance, because in the shadows of espionage, the mind is the ultimate weapon. New recruits were first stripped of their personal identities, a process both symbolic and practical. Names were replaced with codes, personal histories compartmentalized, and emotional attachments temporarily set aside. This was necessary to cultivate absolute loyalty to the mission above all else. Recruits entered controlled environments designed to test endurance, patience, and focus. Lights would flicker unpredictably, schedules were altered daily, and clocks showed different times to destabilize perception of normalcy. These controlled stresses trained recruits to maintain composure under uncertainty, to adapt instantly, and to rely on instinct combined with analytical reasoning. Simulated crises formed a major part of training. Candidates faced scenarios of betrayal, ambush, or moral dilemmas that tested their decision-making under duress. Each scenario was carefully structured to reveal instincts, judgment, and emotional control. Trainers observed micro-expressions, body language, breathing patterns, and reaction times, evaluating every detail to determine whether the candidate could handle high-stakes situations. Failures were not punished with anger, but with repetition and isolation, a method that encouraged learning while instilling discipline. Success required not only survival, but the ability to anticipate consequences, act preemptively, and remain undetected. Observation skills were honed to extraordinary levels. Recruits learned to decode subtle gestures, vocal intonations, and behavioral cues. Every small action, a glance, a hesitation, a fleeting smile, could contain crucial information. Trainees memorized patterns of human behavior, social interactions, and environmental variables to predict outcomes and detect hidden threats. Exercises included surveillance simulations where they had to follow targets without being seen, reconstruct conversations from memory, and identify inconsistencies in stories without any digital aid. Human intuition and analytical skill were trained to function as a seamless unit, a combination that technology alone could not replicate. Cognitive endurance and memory were continuously challenged. Trainees were required to memorize long sequences of numbers, codes, and behavioral observations, often under conditions of sleep deprivation or sensory overload. This was complemented by problem-solving tasks, scenario mapping, and rapid decision-making exercises that simulated real operational conditions. The aim was to create operatives whose mental agility matched the unpredictable demands of fieldwork, enabling them to process information instantly, act decisively, and remain composed under extreme pressure. Ethical and moral ambiguity was introduced in controlled scenarios. Trainees faced situations where there were no clear right or wrong answers, only operational consequences. This prepared them for real-life missions where moral clarity was often blurred, and decisions had to be made quickly based on strategic priorities. Understanding the balance between empathy and operational necessity became a critical skill. The ability to detach emotionally without losing situational awareness was repeatedly reinforced. Teamwork and interdependence were also central to psychological preparation. Each operative's actions could directly influence the safety and effectiveness of others. Exercises were designed to cultivate trust, mutual awareness, and coordinated execution while maintaining compartmentalization. Agents learned to function as independent sensors within a network organism, where communication, timing, and anticipation ensured collective operational success, even if individual visibility remained limited. Physical training ran parallel with psychological conditioning. Endurance, agility, and stealth were essential, as missions could require long periods of observation, infiltration, or rapid extraction. Combat skills were taught with emphasis on precision, restraint, and efficiency, but physical capability alone was insufficient without mental control. Each trainee had to integrate body and mind into a single operative capable of navigating complex environments, making split-second judgments, and executing strategies flawlessly. At the heart of this training was the philosophy that knowledge, anticipation, and mental fortitude were the true weapons. Agents emerged from the program transformed, able to operate in complete anonymity, process complex intelligence, and execute missions with discretion. Every skill acquired psychological resilience, situational awareness, ethical discernment, memory mastery, and physical competence was intended to ensure that when they entered the field, they became living instruments of national security, silent, precise, and invisible. By the end of this intensive preparation, recruits were not merely trained operatives. They were highly disciplined instruments of strategy, capable of observing, analyzing, and influencing events without ever being noticed. Their minds became as sharp as any technology, their judgment as reliable as the most sophisticated system, and their presence undetectable in the environments they operated within. Through rigorous training and psychological molding, the ISI ensured that its operatives were prepared to meet the unpredictable challenges of modern intelligence work with mastery, resilience, and absolute discretion. Part 6. Internal Security and Counterintelligence. Once the operatives were trained and the intelligence-gathering networks were established, the next critical layer of the organization's strength emerged: internal security and counterintelligence. Protecting the agency itself from infiltration, betrayal, or compromise became as essential as monitoring external threats. Counterintelligence operations were methodical and relentless. Agents were trained to identify patterns of suspicious behavior among colleagues, to detect subtle deviations from expected routines, and to uncover hidden allegiances. Loyalty was continuously assessed, not merely assumed. Psychological profiling was employed extensively, with periodic evaluations designed to reveal vulnerabilities that could be exploited by hostile entities. Every member of the organization became both observer and observed, ensuring a self-regulating ecosystem of trust and vigilance. Technical surveillance complemented human observation. Security cameras, signal monitors, and encrypted communications tracking were not just external measures, but internal tools to verify the integrity of operations. However, excessive dependence on technology was avoided because human deception could often bypass even the most sophisticated systems. Therefore, observation and intuition remained paramount, ensuring that every anomaly, no matter how subtle, could be identified, traced, and neutralized. Isolation protocols were strictly enforced. Departments functioned independently, often unaware of the full scope of each other's operations. Compartmentalization ensured that a breach in one area could never cascade to compromise the entire network. Even high-ranking officers received information strictly on a need-to-know basis. This created a lattice of secrecy where knowledge itself became a defense, protecting critical missions and sensitive operatives from exposure. Field counterintelligence was equally sophisticated. The agency anticipated that adversaries might attempt to infiltrate operations through bribery, coercion, or deception. Agents were trained in operational security, identity verification, and subtle behavioral checks to detect manipulation. Any irregularity in communication or conduct could trigger a cascade of verification procedures designed to isolate potential threats. In this way, the organization remained resilient, proactive, and adaptive, capable of identifying hostile interference before it could achieve any impact. The internal security framework also involved simulations of betrayal and insider threats. Recruits and operatives alike were subjected to exercises where hidden adversaries attempted to manipulate information or create false leads. These drills tested decision-making under uncertainty, reinforced protocols, and prepared operatives to react swiftly without causing operational compromise. The agency's philosophy was that preparedness for internal threats was as vital as readiness for external attacks, because an unseen mole could dismantle years of careful intelligence work. Strategic interventions were carefully orchestrated when anomalies were detected. Operations against hostile elements, whether internal or external, were executed with precision to neutralize risks silently and efficiently. Agents specialized in containment, extraction, and neutralization carried out these interventions without drawing attention. The emphasis was on invisibility. The less the world knew about an action, the greater the operational impact. Threats were eliminated at the planning stage, often before they could materialize or become visible to anyone outside the inner circles. The architecture of internal security was dynamic. Systems evolved continuously, learning from every incident, adapting protocols, and refining operational procedures. Feedback loops ensured that mistakes became lessons, weaknesses were corrected, and countermeasures were improved in real time. The organization itself functioned as a living organism, capable of self-diagnosis and self-repair, with intelligence flowing seamlessly across its nodes, while threats were continuously monitored and mitigated. Ethics in internal counterintelligence were complex yet rigorously maintained. Operations avoided unnecessary harm to uninvolved parties, and protocols emphasized precision, legality, and strategic necessity. The agency understood that moral compromise could erode internal cohesion, so every action was calculated not only for effectiveness, but also for long-term sustainability of trust and operational integrity. Through these methods, the agency became a fortress within a fortress. while outwardly ordinary offices and everyday environments concealed the network. Internally, it was a sophisticated system of vigilance, adaptability, and foresight. Every member, every procedure, and every protocol contributed to a culture where the agency's integrity remained uncompromised, ensuring that threats, whether from external adversaries or internal infiltrators, were neutralized with meticulous precision before they could endanger national security. As the intelligence world evolved, silence was no longer maintained only through human minds and handwritten codes. A new era emerged where technology was not a replacement for human instinct, but a force multiplier. Inside the intelligence framework, computers were introduced not as machines, but as silent partners, transforming raw data into patterns faster than any human could achieve alone. Digital support systems began mapping communication flows, social behavior shifts, economic signals, and regional movements, turning the chaos of global information into structured intelligence landscapes that could be understood and predicted. Encrypted communication devices changed the very nature of secrecy. Small, unremarkable tools allowed operatives to exchange secure messages that looked like ordinary digital noise to outsiders. Secure channels were designed to resist interception by relying on layered protection, symbolic coding, and time-based authentication. But what made these devices powerful was not the hardware. It was the human discipline behind their use. Agents were trained to never fully trust technology, to assume that every channel could eventually be compromised, and to maintain contingency thinking even while using the most advanced systems. Surveillance also entered a new age, not as visible control, but as passive observation. Modern monitoring relied on pattern recognition rather than direct intrusion. Data streams from public infrastructure, transportation flows, and open-source digital behaviors were studied to detect anomalies rather than invade privacy. Intelligence became less about watching individuals and more about understanding systems. Movements of money, unusual digital rhythms, and shifts in communication behavior were interpreted like subtle earthquakes in the information landscape. Inside the headquarters, analysts became digital architects. Large-scale data was not treated as noise, but as a living environment. Algorithms assisted in organizing, filtering, and predicting, but final judgment always stayed in human hands. No automated system was allowed to make critical decisions without human interpretation. This balance protected the essence of intelligence work. Technology served the mind, not the other way around. Training adapted around these tools. Operatives were taught how to operate advanced systems without becoming dependent on them. They learned how to disappear digitally as well as physically, how to communicate securely, and how to maintain operational silence in an age where information traveled instantly. The agency understood a fundamental truth. Modern intelligence was not about acquiring more power, but about mastering complexity with discipline. The real strength of these technologies was not their visibility, but their invisibility. They worked quietly in the background, guiding decisions, sharpening instincts, and protecting national stability without ever showing their presence to the world. In this new age, the shadow was no longer just human. It was digital, silent, and omnipresent. At the heart of the intelligence structure was not just machinery, training, or secrecy. It was philosophy. A belief system that valued anticipation over reaction, silence over noise, foresight over force. Became a ritual of discipline, where nothing was left to chance, and no action was taken without calculating its long-term impact. The internal system's strength came from its simplicity, compartmentalization, discipline, and trust built on professional silence. Each unit functioned independently, yet in perfect harmony. This design ensured that even if one part of the system weakened, the whole could continue functioning without visible disruption. It was not a rigid machine. It was an adaptive organism that learned, evolved, and reinforced itself with every challenge it faced. Future preparedness became a permanent state of mind rather than a reaction to danger. The system continuously ran mental simulations of possible global shifts, technological changes, and security challenges. Preparation was not seasonal. It was constant. Intelligence officers were trained to think not in terms of current threats, but future uncertainties, ensuring that the organization remained a step ahead of time rather than chasing it. The shadow legacy of this intelligence architecture was never meant to be celebrated publicly. There were no monuments, no ceremonies, no official recognition. Its success was measured in disasters that never happened, conflicts that never escalated, and threats that were neutralized before they could be seen. The greatest achievement was invisibility itself. Globally, the importance of such an internal system was understood only by those who lived in similar shadows. Intelligence professionals who knew that the strongest architecture is silent and the most powerful influence is unseen. While the public saw only the surface of national security, beneath it lived a disciplined, layered, and resilient engine of protection. This operational philosophy turned the internal system into a living shield for the nation. It was not driven by fear, but by responsibility. Not by aggression, but by vigilance. Not by visibility, but by restraint. And in that restraint lay its true strength. The future of intelligence remains uncertain, shaped by artificial intelligence, digital revolutions, and global complexity. Yet the shadow system stands prepared, not loud, not visible, but ready. Ready to observe, ready to interpret, and ready to protect without ever announcing its presence. As this journey ends, one truth remains clear. Real power does not shout, it whispers. Real strength does not show itself, it exists quietly. And the true legacy of any intelligence system is not what the world sees, but what the world never has to experience. As this powerful journey comes to an end, remember this. The world you see is only the surface. Real battles are fought in silence. Real heroes are never seen. And the future of nations is decided in rooms with no windows and minds trained to think beyond fear. Everything you watched in this documentary was created to make you think, to make you realize that behind every stable nation, there is a silent system working day and night to keep chaos away. If this documentary expanded your thinking, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who love deep, real, and powerful stories. Your support motivates us to bring more high-quality documentary content for you. Disclaimer: this documentary is created for educational and awareness purposes only. It is based on publicly available information, historical research, and cinematic storytelling. No sensitive or classified information has been revealed. Any resemblance to real operations is purely coincidental. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay curious, and remember, in the world of shadows, silence is power.